welcome to our lecture. We're going to continue now the theme that we were talking about last week, which was the issue of the personality traits, character traits. So we talked last week about ga'ava, which is arrogance and haughtiness, right? And we discussed that more or less. We understood what that means, I think. But I want to just point out something else also, that we talked about ga'ava, and we said that ga'ava, the arrogance. There's a story brought down in the Gemara. I want to bring you for interesting story about this, right? Which shows you by how much damage the arrogance does, the haughtiness, thinking you're above everybody, the nose in the air, all this stuff, everything. So how much damage does it do? Even if you're like a very wise man, like a big rabbi, big judge, like this guy, judge, big judge. So the thing is that there's a story brought down in the Gemara like this. Rabbi Nasi, who was one of the big rabbis of the Talmud, they sent him from some community which was outside of the land of Israel a request. They said, we don't have a rabbi over here, so send us one of your sharp students, one of those sharp guys, and so he can teach us the Torah, to teach us the way to go. So he says, okay, fine. Once he sees the letter, he sends him, like one of his best students. Tells him, go over there, teach them, direct them how to do things properly. So he goes over there, right? This was supposed to be like the best student of the Rabbi Nasi, top notch, cream of the cream, So he goes over there, and they tell him, they ask him like 3 questions, if he knows the answer to these questions, right? What does it turn out? He doesn't know the answer to any of them. Can you imagine? He looks like a fool. Looks like an idiot. Can you imagine? So he came back, after this fiasco, and Rabbi Nasi asks him. He says, "What happened? How did it go?" So he says, "Wow," I said, "I really messed up. Everything they asked me, I didn't know the answer to the question. I wasn't able to do anything for them." So he says, "Why? What? But what? You're my wisest student. One of my wisest students. How can that happen to you? Such a thing like this?" So he asks him. He says, "You know what? Ask me. Tell me, what questions did they ask you?" So he tells him the questions. So after the rabbi hears the questions that they asked him, he says, "These you didn't know? You know the answer to all these questions. These are very simple questions. ABC, 1, 2, 3. What's the problem over here?" So he tells the rabbi, he says, you're right, Rabbi. He says, really the truth is that I should have been able to answer all these questions. So then the rabbi tells him, he says, so what happened to you? You had a mind block? What, you got blocked? What happened? So he says, what happens is, I'll tell you what was the story. When I went there, they said to me like this, right? When I got there, they said, "Oh, you're that rabbi that, we heard about. He's supposed to be like the sharpest student of Rabbi Nasi." So they said, when he heard that, that they praised him like that. They gave him a big compliment. So he said, that's what messed me up. That's what he tells them, you understand? After they gave me this compliment, I wasn't able to answer anything. You understand? So what's the moral lesson over here, right? The moral lesson was like this, that when he got that compliment, he felt like all of a sudden, very high, very exalted. So because of that made him lose his wisdom. He couldn't answer the questions anymore.
So
you understand?
Compliment you?
Only once a year. You can do once a year.
It's funny because I was sitting. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was sitting in Dunkin' Donuts. It just happened to me. You walked out to walk the dog, I think, and I'm sitting in my office over there in Dunkin' Donuts, and this Bulgarian girl, she's 24, lady, married her. She was working on her. She's going to be the one that was going to be sonogram, whatever, sonogram student. And she asked me how old I was, and I told her I'm going to be 53, and she goes, "You don't look 53." As soon as she said that, my whole image of myself changed. I started looking at the class. I started going like this. I thought I was going to get married tomorrow again. Have 20 girls around me. It's true. That's what a compliment can do.
Yes.
To a person.
Yes. So the point is, Rabotai, that the Chazal teach us, right, from this story you learn what the Chazal say. The Chazal say that when a person is arrogant, when he has the haughtiness, he's haughty, so what happens is that makes him forget his wisdom also, In other words, even if he's a very wise man, the fact that he even got like a rush of, like a one rush of haughtiness, all of a sudden he felt big, he felt strong, he felt, this, even that will put him down.
But don't we need that sometimes as human beings?
Well, we're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss what we actually need, according to what the rabbis tell us, right? What we actually need. We're going to talk about that. But
sometimes
I want to tell you that
not 24/7.
For sure not. The question is if at all, right? That's the question, right? So,
like when a girl tells you, "Get lost, greaseball," you feel like a complete loser.
You had it coming to you because
Why? Because you asked her if she wants ice cream.
Because you spoke with the wrong accent.
But then the wisdom comes back, right?
That's true. That's it. What he's saying is true. So when I tell you, Rabbi, is like this, right? That this is exactly what we talked about last week. That we said, according to Rav Chaim Vital, the Talmid of the Arizal, we said that a person who has problems with his character traits, and being one of the main ones is the gava, is the arrogance. So what happens is that he's not able to learn, he's not able to study. When he thinks a lot of himself, not able to study. So it says the opposite, right? The Rav Chaim Vital also. The opposite of what? That when a person is very humble, has humility, doesn't think much of himself, doesn't think of anything of himself. I'm just a regular guy, dust, ashes, this, that, whatever. We talk about these things, right?
Like the
so what happens is that. So what happens is like this, right? That when a person thinks this way of himself, the wisdom just like falls on him, like all of a sudden just drops on him. He's able to be a receptacle for the wisdom. This is the greatness of the humility. You understand? And that's why we find, by the way, that all the big rabbis that we had in the Jewish world, always humble people. Not very, not very flashy, not very shiny. The Lubavitcher Rebbe looked like a little, when I saw him, he looked like a little guy, I looked down at him like this. You wouldn't think, if you didn't know who he was, you would think he's just a little short guy.
Doesn't the story go that he was kind of not exiled, but unaccepted by some of the sects because when they pointed at him and said, he's the next Messiah, he never denounced. In other words, he could have said, guys, I'm not the Messiah. But he actually took it.
Right. That's, you're saying a very interesting point over here. This point is actually very powerful. The truth is that they say, by the way, I heard from some source, some book, I remember, that I saw something amazing about exactly what you said. Exactly on our topic. That what? Why is it that usually, the big rabbis, they always get slack from somebody, somebody like beats them up, like verbally or, not physically I'm talking about, but, they get criticized and they get, put down, the insults and the lashon hara, the gossip and all these things, right? Every big rabbi suffers from this. That's like a rule. So you know what the answer is? The answer is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem sends them this, to keep them humble, that they shouldn't get too arrogant. You understand? It's actually very good for them. The people are criticizing them. Why? Because they don't think now they're, I'm so smart, everybody agrees with me, everybody loves me, everybody accepts me, When you have like criticism, so actually that's something which can build you as a rabbi. You understand? So actually this is something very positive. So actually it's a very positive thing, this whole thing. And by the way, one time I remember, to be honest with you, I heard this also from Maran, Moreno Rabbeinu, Rav Ovadia. He told us that it's written in the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, right? One of the big rabbis, commentators on the Bible, Orach Chaim HaKadosh. He was from Morocco, right? So this rabbi was a very, very holy man. He was like a Messiah, like Mashiach, whatever. So with that generation, he wasn't like a Mashiach of that generation. So what happened was that he writes in his book, the Orach Chaim, that when a person learns Torah, like with honesty, integrity, so always people rise up against him, like to counter him. It's a given that's going to happen. You understand? He's going to get antagonism. He's going to get opposition. It's like you can assume that it's going to happen. Because why is that, by the way? The reason is because when you're straight and you have integrity, people don't like that. Some people are crooked, so when they see somebody who's straight, they get jealous of him. How can he be so straight? How can it be so, as an arrow, like an arrow? Well, how can it be? You have to be a little bit practical, like you said, you gotta cheat a little bit, you gotta lie a little bit, you gotta, cut corners, and round corners and this and that, whatever. You gotta be a little bit practical, like, you're too honest, you're, like, alalichar, like they say, the Georgians, you're too innocent.
Yeah.
So they don't like that, people don't like this kind of character. So they try to go against people like that. So the truth is, right, that all these things are very, very true. But the point is, Rabbi, the bottom line is that the Rav Chaim Vital tells us that when a person has humility and also other good character traits, like we're going to discuss now, another character trait as well. So he tells us that then it's very easy for you to learn Torah. It comes like you drink it in. Like you take a nice big gulp, a beer. Our friend, that guy who drinks beer. He likes to drink beer. This guy, right? Our friend who I'm talking about. So they like to drink it like in one shot. Like this, right? All the way down until it's all gone, and then another one, and another one, and another one, right? That's exactly what a person does when he has humility. He drinks in the Torah like those beers, one after the other. 6-pack. Why? Because the humility allows him to acquire everything. Understand? When you don't think much of yourself. That's what it is. So a person who has good midot, says Rav Chaim Vital, it's the basis. He has a foundation for his neshama, and therefore he can acquire everything. And by the way, you see people like this.
You should have testified in front of the Senate.
You will see people like this, that they are like born with good quality, good character traits, and because of that, they were able to learn like vast amounts of information when they were young. Like, when they got to college age already, they already know a tremendous amount of material. So why is that? Because of the good character traits. So it all depends on that. This is the whole thing. So anyway, Rabbi, we see from here that also gava, when you have haughtiness, it takes away your wisdom. You lose your wisdom. First of all, you can't acquire it. Very hard to acquire it. And even if you did acquire it and you got afterwards you became arrogant, you can also lose it. That's also another thing, right? Now we're going to talk about something else also, which is also related to this. These are like two brothers, you understand? What are meant to be two brothers? We're talking about two bad brothers, two twins, which are both of them are evil. One of them is gava, one of them is arrogance, and the other one is kas, right, which is anger. Anger is also the twin brother of this guy. Why the twin brother? Because they're compared to each other in the Torah. What does that mean? We told you last week, right, that when a person has arrogance, it's like he's like an idol worshiper. He makes himself into an idol. I'm Mr. Cool, I'm Mr. High, my nose is in the air, kiss my feet, bow down, this kind of thing. When a person behaves like this, right, you can't even it's intolerable, I just want to run away, You can't even talk with the guy, like he looks down at you like with those eyes, like you're his subject, He wants to control you, he wants to dominate you, he wants to, this kind of person, just want to run from the people like this. So we say, right, that a person who does this is like making himself into an idol. Gava, arrogance,
Chuck Schumer?
So now, the twin brother of this is the kas. Twin brother is the kas. Right? He was definitely higher than everybody else.
Yes.
No question about that, right? Okay. Okay. So the other one is the kas, right? The anger, right? Anger is also the Gemara says the same thing about anger. That a person who's angry tends to get angry a lot. It's like he's an idol worshiper also, compared to an idolater. What does that mean? So what that means is like this, right? That when you get angry, what is the source of that? What is the reason why you get angry? What's the root?
You know better.
Yeah, that's true. But I want to say also like a little bit more that a person who gets angry, he gets frustrated because people don't do what he wants. They don't listen to his opinion. They don't agree with him. So that you cannot tolerate that. What, you dare not to disagree with me? You dare to defy my wishes? You dare, to all these things come from the he gets angry. Why is that? Because when you don't do his will, It's like, he's angry. Why? Why angry? Because I'm the boss. You got to be my subject. If you don't do my will, I get angry at you, right? I'm gonna insult you. I'm gonna yell at you. I'm gonna put you down, right? I'm gonna make mincemeat out of you, grind you up, yell at you, embarrass you in front of everybody. Why is that? Because you think you're better than everybody else, So everybody's got to do your will. Everybody's going to listen to you, become your subject, become your slave, right? Become your servant. And this is like idolatry. Understand why? Because you think you're like a god. If they don't agree with you, you don't agree? I'm going to give it to you now. You're going to get it, huh? I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you who's boss. I'm going to put fire on you now, right? Burn you alive. That's what I'm going to do with my anger. So this is also a form of avodah zarah, anger. You understand? This is the reason why. By the way, the same thing they say about avodah zarah also, like arrogance. That a person who tends to get angry, what happens? Can't acquire wisdom. His wisdom is blocked. Acquisition, blocked. Number one. Number two, also, if he acquired wisdom, he's going to forget. It's going to cause him to forget his wisdom. You know what usually happens, by the way? When does a person make a mistake? Something like does something really foolish when he's angry, right? That's one of the reasons why. When he gets angry, he loses his temper, and he just twitchy, gets twitchy, Yeah. He doesn't think what he's doing. Can't think, he's not poised. So because of that, he starts to jump and kick and, shove, push, here, there. For sure he's going to make a mistake, no question about it, right? Something is going to go wrong. That means his wisdom is not with him right now. Right? His wisdom is gone. At this point, he's not thinking like a rational human being. He's thinking like some kind of angry animal in the forest. He's gonna tread over you. Just mow you down. Bulldozer. So therefore, the anger also is this. This is what it does. It takes away the ability for a person to acquire wisdom, and also it makes him lose his wisdom if he already has. They say the same thing, by the way, about a person who's a prophet, right? Let's say he became a prophet. So they say that if a prophet gets angry, you know what happens to him? He loses his prophecy also. In other words, he got prophecy from Hashem. God gave him some prophecy, and because he got angry, he starts to forget what Hashem told him. Can't remember. Gets like a mental block. Just doesn't remember what's going on. Fades out. So you see, right? The anger is also something which is a fundamental flaw that a person totally disarms him, disables the person. It makes you into a handicap, basically. You're emotionally handicapped person. That's what it is, right? So the anger is a very, very big problem. It's a killer, by the way. Also, why is it a killer? Because when do usually people commit murder? When they're angry. You can kill somebody like this. Somebody gets on your case, right? Tells you some words you didn't like. What's up? Jump on it. Finish him off. That's it. Right? Most of the cases of murder are because of anger. They got into a little argument. This, that, insults. This, pushing, shoving, blah blah blah. All of a sudden, bah. One kick, this, that, gets him down on the floor. Right? Gives him a bat. Bah. That's it. Finished. Gone. But it's also, by the way, not only that causes you to kill somebody else, but also you kill yourself also when you get angry. Why is that? Because it causes diseases, right? The doctors will tell you, right, that when you get angry, you get all kinds of things going on in your body. What really happens? You know what really happens? First of all, you can get an ulcer from that. You know that, right? You get a nice big hole in your stomach.
Your immune system.
Yeah, because what it does is basically the anger triggers a release of all kinds of chemicals in your body, hormones. Right, all kinds of things, and enzymes, and all kinds of, there are good hormones and there are also bad hormones, there are harmful ones. The anger releases harmful hormones. That's what it does. In the body. So it can burn a hole in your stomach, right? The acid, because the acid comes from what? Because you're angry. The acid becomes too strong, too powerful, right? So a person can kill himself as well when he's angry, especially if he does it all the time. Day in, day out, always angry at somebody, this person, that person, angry here, angry there. So this is the anger is a very destructive thing. So what does this mean, right? Bottom line, when the question is like this, right? Okay, we know that anger is very, very bad. You can lose your wisdom, you can lose your life, God forbid, right? You can lose a lot of things from anger. But the question is it really ever allowed to be angry? Or it's never allowed? That's the question, right? This is the question. So the truth is, right, that in the Rambam, we have two places. That's why I was ignoring Nissim when he was here, right? Because I wanted to look at these sources. I probably insulted him, but but anyway, right? I was just trying to find out these things, because a very important point over here. In the Rambam, you find two different places. He talks about anger, but he's talking it seems to contradict one the other, right? In one place, the Rambam says that a person is allowed to get angry when it's called on, called for. What does that mean, called for? There's some kind of situation which requires a little bit, discipline, to scare somebody, or to bring him back to reality. He's a little bit dazed, hazed and dazed. So you got to yell at him in order to just wake him up a little bit. Hey, wake up! What are you doing? Hey, what is it with you? Hello. Wake up! Something is wrong with the way you're behaving. Sometimes you need to stress it by the anger. It puts a stress on that. It accents it, right? That's what it is. You know what I mean? So the Rambam says, in a case like that, it's allowed to get angry. If you need to get angry in order to, make some kind of, once in a while, as a tool to, get people to be disciplined, or to be, concentrated, or whatever it is. In a different place, the Rambam seems to be saying something else altogether. Right? He's saying like this, right? That really the truth is that a person should never get angry. Even for something very, very important, don't do it. Not recommended. Not recommended. Right? So what does he say, by the way? He says that if you see a situation where you need to rebuke somebody, because they're doing something very, very foolish, very stupid, against the Torah or against just human, logic, whatever, doing something very stupid, making danger, some kind of dangerous situation, like people who, these people who speed on the highway, go 150 miles an hour. They could kill somebody, A person like that needs to be yelled at, you gotta, get it into his head. Hey, what are you doing? You're not only endangering yourself when you speed like that, you're endangering the whole highway there. Somebody could get killed, you and also 5 other people, 10 other people. Just because you want to have your fun on the highway, to test out if your car is, 0 to 100, 0 to this, quarter mile. Okay, but, wait a second, what's going on over here? How many people you're gonna take with you when you go? How many? You never know what's going to be, right? So a person like that, or a person who's a big sinner, let's say, right, doing some sins in public, doesn't have any regard for Torah, for respect. That story. I'm going to make you laugh. I don't know if you remember this, right? There was one of the presidents over here who was, driving to shul on Shabbat. You remember this guy? I'm not going to mention his name. Sure. So I'm going to tell you. Okay. So anyway, the point is, right, that what happened was that he came to the shul one day. So one of the Gabaim over here, one of the guys over here, tells him, he was parking the car, he has no shame. He parks the car right in front of the shul. At least park it a little bit, 2 blocks off, something like that, whatever. He parks it right in front, to show everybody. Oh, I'm here, Oh, thanks, great, fantastic. You're here, okay. So he tells him, might as well he says, what he said? Instead of parking it outside there, just drive in, and park it in front of the Heichal HaKodesh, in front of the Sefer Torah. You should park it. You remember this? It's a funny joke, right? Yeah, that's what I told him. It's good that he said that, by the way. You have to embarrass people like that. No shame. It's it's not a shame to be in front of the shul like that with a car. No. He's the president of the shul. He has to be an example. We're not talking about somebody who's just one of the people just coming from New Jersey or whatever. We're talking about somebody who's running the shul. He has to be an example of integrity, honesty, dignity, whatever. All these things. So the point is, Rabbi, that in a case like this, the Rambam says if you need to get somebody back to reality, it's like living in a fantasy world. He's doing something very dangerous or something very bad, desecrating the name of God. So the Rambam says in a case like that, over here, we said right in the first place that he wrote about it, he said in cases like this you're allowed to get angry. It's okay. Over here he says, what? Don't get angry, just pretend you're angry. In other words, you give him a 3rd degree, yell at him, whatever, but inside your heart, you're not really angry. You know what I mean? That's hard to do, by the way. Not so easy to do that. Because once you start to do those external, motions, it also, it starts to stir up the inside as well. You know what I mean? So it's not so easy to do that, to do this kind of thing. You have to be very, very strongly in control of yourself. But the truth is, Rabbi, that it seems like what the Rambam, when he says, why is there a contradiction between one place and the Rambam? One place is talking about halacha. The straight halacha is that what? There are some places where you're allowed to get angry. In Judaism. It's very, very, very much called for. But in the other place, the Rambam is discussing Hasidut. What does that mean? Piety, right? To be a pious. A pious person should just pretend that he's angry, right? Not really get angry in reality. Just pretend like he's angry. In order to make, to get somebody to come back to reality, he's like becoming a delinquent, person is juvenile delinquent or some kind of going in the wrong direction in life, doing drugs. God knows, right? All these things, right? Once a person starts to do these things, sometimes he needs to be yelled at a little bit, so get him in the back, whatever. So it says the Rambam, just pretend like you're angry. Don't really be angry, right? So what's really the interesting things, by the way, that I looked in the Zohar Kadosh. This was like several months ago, whatever. The Zohar Kadosh, by the way, the interesting thing, you ever, by the way, you should know that the Rambam is considered to be one of the smartest people that we ever had in the Judaism. He was a very, very super, super smart man. He had a very, very, very amazing mind, this man. Right? Yeah, amazing mind. How amazing was his mind, by the way? They say, by the way, that the Arizal, he considered the Rambam to be the most important posek. In other words, the most important man in halacha, right? Even the Mekubal, like Arizal, and the Rambam was not in the Mekubal. He never learned Kabbalah, the Rambam. You know what I mean? So he didn't have it. He didn't have anybody to teach him. He had nobody to teach him. So he didn't have the Zohar either, but he didn't have any of his books. He didn't have anything. So the Rambam never learned the Kabbalah, but they say that because he was so wise, just a very sharp mind, he was able to get almost to that level of the wisdom of the Kabbalah, with his own intellect. That's how sharp he was. It's an unbelievable level that he had. And that's why the Maran Bet Yosef also, he says this, right, in his book Avkat Rochel. He says, the Rambam hu Gdol HaPoskim, he's the greatest of the authorities, the Jewish authorities.
So we always say,
the greatest of the, we give him more weight than everybody else, especially the Sfardim, right? You know that. Sfardim, we give him a lot of weight. Much, much more than the Ashkenazim, but still everybody gives him a lot of weight. So the point is, Rabotai, that the Rambam here, you see that he got very close to the words of the Zohar with his own intellect, because he never saw the Zohar. He didn't have that book. The Rishonim, those rabbis who lived in the medieval era, right? They didn't have the Zohar. The Zohar was hidden at that time. So a lot of them, by the way, most of them didn't learn Kabbalah also.
Even when he went to Egypt, he could not find?
It wasn't around. It disappeared at that time. He didn't even know what it was. Yeah? So basically, what happened was that the Rambam, with his own intellect, got very close to the Zohar. Why do I tell you that? The Zohar says almost the same thing as the Rambam. That what? The Zohar says that if you're displaying anger in order to rebuke somebody who's, people of the community, or people who are doing sins, going the wrong way in life, doing all kinds of derelict behavior, degenerate behavior, things like this. So says Zohar Kadosh, you're allowed to get angry at them and give it to them, really give it to them, rip them apart. That's what the Zohar says. You know what the Zohar says also? Something amazing. It says that it doesn't damage your soul when you do that. In other words, when you generally get angry, it does damage your soul. You do great damage to your soul. We're going to talk about that right now. But the Zohar Kadosh says that when you get angry for this purpose, to bring people back to reality, they should live a good life, and you want to give them like a little bit of a shock them into reality by displaying anger. Zohar Kadosh says there's no harm in that. There's no harm. Yeah, it's something that you're allowed to do. Lechatchila.
The Zohar is very, very stringent about this.
Yeah. So can you imagine something like this? This is something amazing. So we see from here that the Rambam got like 99% close to the Zohar over here. Because it's pretty much the same thing he was saying. So what's really the difference between the Zohar and the Rambam? The difference is the Rambam says just pretend like you're angry. Zohar says you can actually be angry.
Zohar has a
can you imagine such a thing like this?
Zohar has a higher.
This is a bigger chidush. This is a bigger novelty over here. Yeah. So Zohar says you're actually allowed to be angry for this purpose. It's an amazing thing, right? So now let me explain to you the Arizal, what he said about this, right, to his students. We talked about this before, by the way,
The Rambam
before
maybe say this
several months.
because he didn't have a insight into the soul's.
I'm sorry, what's that again?
The Rambam maybe say that just in case to be covered because he didn't know the capacity of the souls.
I think he knew very well what he was talking about. It was pretty much, he was
like pretend.
For him, there was no gray area. You understand? The Rambam was like, it's like that. He cut through.
Okay.
There was no doubts by him. If he had a doubt, he would tell you that he has a doubt. But if he says something without that, they had no doubt. So now let's get to the Arizal, right? The Arizal told his students, by the way, be very, very careful. Don't ever get angry for anything. Right? That's what he told his students. You have to be careful. When it comes to anger, you have to be super, super, super careful. Don't touch it. Don't get near that. Stay away from it 10,000 miles. Right? So, what's the interesting thing, right? After he told his students, his disciples, this advice, one day they saw him actually get angry. Right? So what happened, right? They say that there was two jokers, let's say, wise guys, who came, and they came in front of the Arizal and started to do some shtick, in front of the Arizal, talking nonsense, all kinds of this, mockery, words of mockery. So once the Arizal starts to hear this nonsense, they're talking about, right? Making a mockery out of it, So he starts yelling at them, tells them, get out of bed, talk. So, they all of a sudden, right, these two, run out, they got scared, probably the rabbi scared them, and,
The rabbi used to do that to me in Gotcha.
That's funny. So, okay, I guess it was a reincarnation there going on there, whatever, it's okay, whatever. So, after this episode occurs, right, so they come, the disciples were there, they saw this thing, So they came to him and they said, Rabbi, they said, didn't you were the one who told us never to get angry. So what happened over here? You forgot what you taught us? What you had lapse of memory, right? Like that lady, she has a lot of lapses, that lady. So what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. The doctor.
Ford motor cars, yeah. So anyway, the point is, right, that they asked him this question. So you know what he answered? You know what he answered them? His answer was like this, right? He says, I know who these people are. I know their souls. Because the Arizal, everybody would come to him. He would look at his forehead, like I'm looking at yours, and he would know where he came from, what he did in his lifetime. He was able to read everything, on his forehead,
So who were they?
So I'll tell you. So he says, he was, by the way, not only for these guys, he was able to do that for anybody.
Right.
Even inanimate objects.
Huh?
Even inanimate objects.
Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, the point was, maybe. So I didn't hear that, but I believe you. I take your word for it.
No, Chaim Vital says that he used to go by and say, okay, there's a Tana that's buried here.
That's something else, right? The dead body, right? So the point is, right, that he said, these two, I know who they are, their souls. I know who they are. These two are the reincarnations of Datan v'Aviram. Right? So he says, the only tikkun for them, the only rectification for them is to yell at them like this, to put them down. That's what they need.
Bad seed?
So who was Datan v'Aviram? Datan v'Aviram were the ones who opposed Moshe Rabbeinu, gave him a hard time in the desert. They always embarrassed him and yelled at him, Yeah. Obstructionists, yeah. They were obstructionists. Right? They must be from that side, yeah. These guys. Huh?
They were with Korach?
They went with Korach too, yes.
Okay.
They died over there, right?
Yeah.
They went in the ground. They went live in the ground.
Korach's not
They didn't even die. They went alive.
But Korach is not dead.
Yeah, you're right.
So the rabbi basically behaved like
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Continue.
Let's avoid the anger. This is your test, David.
rubbing the last.
He has love around.
So in a way, he yelled like Senator Lindsey Graham yelled the other day when he threw a tantrum.
Right.
Because that was
Yes.
the only way he could deal with it.
That's it. You have to make the point.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to make the point. You're right. I agree with you about that. Anyway, the point is, Rabotai, that he came to them in Datan v'Aviram were very bad boys. They were big troublemakers, these guys. So he told them, he said, now these are the reincarnations, so I have to treat them also badly. People like this, wicked people, sometimes the only way you can neutralize them is to be, like very cruel to them. You have to be cruel. To the wicked, it's not very recommended to be nice to them. You know why? Because when you're nice, it can take advantage of you. They take it as a sign of weakness. You know what I mean? So because of that, they'll attack you because of that sometimes.
So you think
are really
Gotcha reincarnations of?
no, I wouldn't go that far, but maybe him, but not you. Yeah, that's something else. Okay. So you're gonna say that. I was gonna separate. Okay. By the way, that's what your rabbi also said in the school. He made a separation between.
Years later.
Okay, but he was right.
It was too late to say.
I think he was right though.
By then it was too late to say.
He said that he was the enabler, basically.
He tried to get me back into yeshiva through somebody else, and he blamed it on my friend. That David got bad influence from it, which I'm not too sure. Because if you ask my friend, he'll claim that he got some influence from me.
So anyway, Rabbi, what we're saying is like this, right? That he knew that the remedy for these people was to get angry at them. In other words, they need that. So what does that mean? He's not getting angry for himself, because he's like frustrated. He knows that the only way to treat them is like this. And that's the only way you can shut their mouth. You have to be very strong with them. You have to be very forceful. There are cases like this. By the way, a very similar case is also I heard from a different source about the Chafetz Chaim alav hashalom. Right? Chafetz Chaim was in Russia. He was a Russian rabbi, very famous rabbi, right? So he was in the city of Radin. Right? That's where he lived, town of Radin. So what happened was the Chafetz Chaim. You just mentioned Chafetz Chaim. So Chafetz Chaim. What happened was no. He was Lithuanian rabbi. Okay.
I never knew this school was named after him. I swear, until just recently.
Okay, that was the rectification. Tikkun. That was a tikkun also. So the point is, right, that Chafetz Chaim one time they say, right, that he was a very saintly man, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
He wasn't just a regular person. How saintly was he, by the way? You want to know how saintly was this man? They say one day. What happened was that somebody came to rob his house. A robber came into his house, whatever. So he got robbed, and he took some stuff and he started to run. Just made a run for it. So the Chafetz Chaim comes back that second, right? And he sees him. He broke into his house, starts running away. Yeah. So he starts yelling at him. He says, "Wait!" He says, "Wait! Stop! So the guy turns around. What do you want? What do you want, old man? Leave me alone. I'm making my kill over here. So he says, I just want you to know. He says, I forgive you. He says, I forgive you. Go, take the stuff. He says, I forgive you for everything. In other words, whatever you stole, it's yours. Go for it. That's what he told him. Can you imagine?
Don't come back. I'll be waiting for it.
This Chassidut, though.
Can you imagine? This is Chassidut. This is like, this is not regular halakha. This is like piety, This is saintliness. This is something you cannot, a person would think this is not normal.
Was he a master of speech also?
I don't know. But
there are people like that, by the way. Like my father tells me from Tbilisi, one of these uncles, who was like a big aristocrat at one point.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was like 5 years old, when we used to visit, when most people were poor, we were poor, all of us, this guy lived in a museum. I mean, they had bathrooms in their bedroom. That's how they lived in Tbilisi.
Right.
When people would steal from him in business, and they would tell him, "Listen, this guy's stealing from you," he would say, "There's enough for everybody. Let him take it. There's enough for me also. I'm not going to stop."
Yeah, I hear that. So, by the way, is this how saintly he was? This is a very saintly level, though, And by the way, the Chafetz Chaim
I'm not saying he was Chafetz Chaim.
The Chafetz Chaim was not this guy. What do I mean? The Chafetz Chaim was not a rich man. He was a poor man, actually. So for him, to lose that property was probably a very, very big loss. We're talking about but nevertheless,
didn't he tell
he wanted to forgive him
for good things?
So I don't know, but the point is like this, right? That he was so saintly that he did this. So now, right? With a saintly rabbi like this, you would expect him also to control his anger, right? Obviously, you're not going to watch him, lose his temper and start getting red, and start shaking his convulsions, So what happens is like this, right? One day, a certain lady comes into his office, right? His room, whatever. He doesn't have office, room, house, whatever. Same thing, right? It's all one room, office, room, house. It's one room. Everything is one room. They didn't have big rooms. So he was a poor man. So what happened was that lady comes in there, to ask some kind of a question, whatever, talk about something. everybody comes to the rabbi, 'cause- so the disciples were there, some couple of times students were there. So all of a sudden he starts yelling at this lady, Oh, no, kicks her out like that, gives it to her, out, get out of my face. So the disciples are in shock, when they saw this, a saintly rabbi like this, behaving like this, like a godfather, what's going on there? So they asked him a question, the same question. They said, Rabbi, you're a saintly man, you get angry like this? You lose your temper? So what he told them? He said, I didn't do this for me, because I was angry. I did this for her. You understand what I'm saying? Let me elaborate, right? What does that mean? That she needed to be yelled at, because she was like in a state of some kind of a bad state of mind. Like something is, bad in there. Some screws are loose. You understand? So a person who gets like something, becomes like this sometimes, needs to be like put in his place a little bit, like put back in his slot, He's like, something got dislocated, out of the joint, right, was dislocated there. So the only way to push it back is to like shove it in, So sometimes you need to do that to somebody, that a person who's behaving like very arrogantly or flippantly, or being very, just mocking you, all kinds of mockery and this and that. Sometimes it needs to get yelled at, like really,
What about the opposition from the Zohar, though?
Yeah, what about it?
It's against it. So.
Well, the truth is, right, actually it's exactly the same thing. What does that mean? The Zohar also says, right, that in order to put somebody back into his place, he's got dislodged into a bad place in life, you're allowed to, that's exactly what the Zohar says, that you're allowed to get angry with them. You're allowed to give it to them, really like a really third degree. So what do we see from here, Rabbi? That there is actually a case, there is actually some kind of a situation where a person is allowed to get angry, but only for this reason. Otherwise, never. Don't touch it. What does the Arizal say, by the way? The Arizal says that a person who gets angry, you know what happens to him, right? He loses his neshama, he loses his soul. This is why you got to be careful. According to Kabbalah, what does that mean? That a person has like a neshama. He has 3 levels of neshama, right? Nefesh, ruach, neshama. So what happens is that when he gets angry, he loses his soul. Wisdom. At least the higher part, right, of the soul, higher parts, because the nefesh he never loses, right? Otherwise he'll die. If the nefesh goes, he dies. So he never loses that. What happens is that the upper parts of the neshama, he loses it when he gets angry, and it flies away. And what happens? Who comes in its place? From the neshama, from the satan, from the evil side, comes and takes its place. Right? So what does that mean? When a person is in a state of anger, that means now he's being ruled over by the satan. Satan has him now is in his hands. He's like a plaything. He's playing around with you. He's making like a puppet. That's what he's pulling the strings on you. Like that's what the satan is doing to you when you're angry. You lose control. You're in the control of somebody else. Somebody's ruling over you.
Do you remember when Jeb Bush told Trump when they were debating on stage?
Yeah.
Because Trump he insulted everybody.
Rampage.
When he told him, Donald, you're not going to win the presidency by insulting everybody.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. He actually won the presidency. You think that those people deserve that? Because, your average politician
He's a crook.
Lies to you every 2 or 4 years, promises you things they know they're never going to deliver.
Right.
It's a charade. And I think he was sick of this, and he knew that the people were sick of it, and he used it as a weapon.
You're right.
No, if you think of
it was very smart what he did.
If you rationalize.
Very smart. It was very smart.
I mean, the things he said were terrible, some of them, but if you think about it, they were true. They were all liars, all crooked. Maybe you had a couple of... Ted Cruz is a good man.
No, he's not.
And a couple of guys here and there, shady characters, but this one woman to me is writing, she goes, you're just like your president. When you can't make an articulate point,
right,
or you can't convey, what you want to, because you don't have the intelligence to,
right,
you stoop to using,
insults.
Foul language and this and that. So I wrote her back,
this is the only way to talk to people like you.
Because No, because let's say if it's not the Torah and if it's people in a country and we're split, and you have millions of people on this side and millions of people on that side, and in that population you have educated people, but they're still on the side where you would think that only an idiot would go, you know, a Trump side, and they're calling everybody who supports him or a particular person.
Well, let me tell you, piece of good advice, by the way. When it comes to politics, one piece of good advice, which is what? Nothing is really as it seems. In other words, there's a lot of things behind the scenes. It's not so real as you think. In other words, there's all kinds of underlying motives there going on. You understand? It's all strategy. It's not real.
No, most of it is hypocrisy. You know why? When they come out and tell you, they lie to the people, that Trump separated children from parents. Yes, he separated children.
Let's not get into a politics discussion.
But they never brought it up when Obama did it. Because
but
Obama threw out 2 million people from the country.
Right.
And he separated children from
let's get back to Torah, because that's what we're here to do. We're not here to discuss politics. Otherwise, we have to go to Congress.
But did you know that? Right? That Obama just separated children from
We'll talk about this some other time. So anyway, I want to tell you that when a person, the Arizal said that when a person gets angry, he loses his neshama. And by the way, this is a very deep thing. You know why? Because it says in the Talmud also something very similar to that. It says that when a person is angry, you're not allowed to look at him. He's in a state of anger. You shouldn't look at his face. It can harm you.
It's going to rub off on you.
Rub off on you. So what's the reason why? So now that we see the Arizal, what he tells us, it all falls into place. Why is that? If it wasn't Talmud by itself, you wouldn't understand what that means, right? But now we understand. What does that mean? As we said, right, that once a person gets angry, he loses his soul. He gets his soul from the Satan, from the evil side. That's what takes its place. So what does that mean? At this point, he's a Rasha. He's a wicked man now. Even if he's a righteous man in general, but at this point, when he's angry, he's wicked. So what's the halakha, by the way? Halakha says you're not allowed to look at a wicked man. You're not allowed to look at a Rasha. Why is that, by the way? When you look at a Rasha, right, it says the Gemara that it can turn you blind also. You can lose your vision. If you do it like on a normal basis, like continuously, today, tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for several years, you can lose your vision also. So what does that mean? That the countenance of a wicked man, because his soul is wicked, does harm to your vision, to your. So therefore, you're not allowed to look at him. So now we understand, right? Why does the Gemara say you're not allowed to look at a person who's angry? Because he's now considered to be wicked, and you're not allowed to stare at the wicked, right? And this is the reason why a person is not allowed to look at somebody who's angry, because he lost his neshama. Now his neshama came from the Satan, until he gets back to himself, which, by the way, can take a long time to get back to his. But according to the Zohar Kadosh, what we said, right, that since you're allowed to get angry for the sake of putting somebody in his place who's like going off, becoming degenerate, so if that's the case, he's not going to lose the neshama over there. That's what the Zohar is telling you, right? Or in the case like that, he's not going to lose it. So now I want to finish off with this, right? Give you a couple of examples to make the point more clear. So, we have actually in the Bible several great people who got angry, we see, right? Who lost their temper. Who was that? Moshe Rabbeinu was one of them, right? Because he got angry, he lost his life also. Because of that, he died. He wasn't able to go into Israel. He never got into Israel. Why? Because he lost his temper. Can you imagine? So he lost everything because of his anger. Same thing we see, by the way, Yaakov Avinu, right? Yaakov Avinu also got angry with his wife, Rachel. Right? You know the story. Okay, so, why? Because she was complaining to him, I don't have children, and this and that, blah, blah, blah. So he lost his temper. It says in the Pasuk, he got angry, So, the question is like this, right? That Moshe Rabbeinu got punished for this, by the way, because he lost his temper. So, I ask you a question, right? If we just said that if you want to do it in order to put people back into their place, that you want to bring them back into reality, you're allowed to be angry with them. It's okay. So then, why did Moshe Rabbeinu get punished? What's the answer, right? He was also doing l'shem shamayim. He was doing it for the sake of heaven as well. He didn't mean bad. He didn't mean anything bad. So why was the reason why he got punished? The truth is, that if you really think about it, when he lost his temper in this case, right? What was the case, by the way? The case was that Hakadosh Baruch Hu told him, listen, I want you to give water to the people. People are complaining. There's no water, right? We're thirsty. There's no coolers. There's no tap. They had nothing in the desert. They had no water. So they come to Moshe Rabbeinu and they say, give us water. We're thirsty. What do you want to kill us over here? You brought us here to kill us? Shame on you, right? Defaming him like this. Yelling at him, putting him down. They don't care. Moshe Rabbeinu they don't care who he is. When you're thirsty, you start to get angry.
And after everything you did for them.
Yeah. So what happened was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, to Moshe Rabbeinu, don't worry, I have a solution for you. You see that rock over there? Go over there and talk to the rock. Like he's your friend. Hi, how are you? Good morning. So once you start to talk to him, the water will gush out. Don't worry, everybody will drink. So Moshe Rabbeinu lost his temper, right? So instead of going and talking to the rock, he went and he hit the rock, right, with his staff. He went to and before he hit the rock, by the way, he also made like a little bit of a pronouncement, right? What was a pronouncement? You rebels, right? You terrible people, you sinners, this and that. He called them, right? He got sick of them already, from all these insults and the defaming, deriding him all the time.
Was he right though?
He lost it, he lost it.
But he was absolutely right.
So now let me tell you. So then the question is like this, right? You're telling me that he's right. Okay, so the question is, why did he get punished if he was right? So the answer must be, I think the proper answer is to say like this, right? That there's also actually two answers I can give you, right? And we'll stop with this. The first answer is that the truth is, right, that they were giving him a hard time, but that wasn't a reason for him to get angry. Why? Because, it's natural. People are thirsty. You have to understand. They're suffering. So they're going to give you a hard time. They're going to put you down. They're going to insult you. That's a part of the job. You took the job. You knew that it was going to involve this. Kadosh Baruch Hu, by the way, warned him.
One man takes out hundreds of thousands of people on his back. Okay? Yeah. He spends 40 days up there without any. He suffers.
Right.
And the story doesn't add up for me.
In order to answer your question, but I have to give you the second answer. The truth is, because the question is very powerful, what you're asking. So there's also a second answer, but the first answer is like this, right? That really the truth is that he should have lost his temper. What happened? They're complaining? So it's normal to complain. What do you want? In the shul, when the air conditioner gets broken and it's not working, everybody starts yelling, hey, it's hot, they start yelling this and that. That's what happens. Well, bring the goy, tell him to light the air conditioner. They have somebody who's not Jewish, right? He comes and lights it, So until he comes, the yelling starts and there's complaining and this and that.
I don't come here.
Whatever. So
is
that's
this on the holidays?
Yeah, whatever. Any day. It could be also on Shabbat, whatever. Yom Tov, when you're not allowed to use the air conditioner, you're not allowed to light it. So that's what happens, right? So the truth is, right? Moshe Rabbeinu over here should not have lost his temper. Why? Because they weren't really doing something so bad. It's normal to complain like this. It's very annoying, but it's part of being a leader. That's the first answer, right? The second answer is also something else, right? The truth is that Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't really do anything wrong over here. He just lost his temper a little bit. They made him crazy. You can't blame a person for that. There's a lot of pressure involved in these cases. So then why did he get punished? The truth is, right, the Chazal say, right, the Midrash says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was just looking for a pretext to punish him. It was a pretext, you understand? In other words, he really didn't do anything wrong, like you said, right? This was like totally innocent, totally normal. So then what was it? HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want him to go into Eretz Israel. That's the whole thing, right? It wasn't part of the plan yet. It was too early for that to happen, because if he'd have gone there, it would have been Mashiach already, this and that, whatever. So he didn't want that. The world wasn't ready for that. So therefore he found a pretext, you understand, to keep him out of Eretz Israel.
I see.
And by the way, this was actually something very, very good. Why? Because since he was buried outside of Israel, right? Buried in the country of Jordan, right? Over there. He was buried over there. So that's actually a very good thing. Why? Because they say that in the merit that he's buried over there, all the Jews, when the dead will rise, so in the merit of the Moshe Rabbeinu that was buried there, they're also going to rise with him and come back, right? So therefore, there's something actually very good. And this is the reason, by the way, also, they always ask, right, why did the Rebbe, Lubavitcher, didn't want to go to Israel, be buried there, and this and that. Probably the same thing, because he wanted to be here with his people, that they should also have, through him, they should merit also to go.
Because Moshe Rabbeinu was buried Chutz La'aretz, outside of the land.
Yeah.
In his merit, all the dead will rise.
Right, all the dead that are, outside. Yeah. So, because of that, Moshe, it protects also, by the way. It protects the people. There's a protection in the merit that he's buried there. Right. All kinds of things. So actually, this was a very, very good thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu found him a pretext, He found him a way to keep him out. What can you do? Because it wasn't a master... When you go against the master plan, you could be, 100% righteous, but Hashem won't let you do what you want to do. Because, He's not ready for that yet. He doesn't want the world to be in that mode yet.
So basically, we can't win. Even if we don't deserve it, we may get punished.
Well, it depends. This is very, this is a very...
Pray to God, and God said, I'll do it. I'll reform the world. I don't mind.
This is a very subtle thing, This is not something which happens on a daily basis, right? This kind of thing, right? This is something very unique, very, very unusual, very, whatever. Okay, so thanks for coming anyway. God bless you all the blessings. We'll see you next week. Have a good weekend. Have a good Shabbat.